You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. The western United States is in the midst of fire season. Here in Washington, the Burdoin Fire in the Columbia Gorge has burned more than 100,000 acres. The Bear Gulch Fire on the peninsula has closed portions of Olympic National Park. Leading up to this summer, governors and lawmakers raised concerns about cuts to the U.S. Forest Service, which fights wildland fires. Brooke Rollins is head of the USDA, the Agriculture Department, which oversees the Forest Service. She told Fox News that the agency's ability to fight fires has not been affected by the cuts.
We are operationally ready. It did not compromise and will not compromise at all 1%. What needs to be done to make sure that we are ready.
But new reporting from ProPublica has found the agency is facing staffing issues that could affect its ability to respond to fires. Abe Streep is a reporter at ProPublica on the Southwest desk. Abe, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So what is the federal government saying about staffing for wildfire season? And then we're going to get to what you found in your reporting.
So the Forest Service has said that it has reached 99% of its wildland firefighting hiring goal. And the Forest Service is the government agency that employs the most wildland firefighters.
And what did you find when you dug around for numbers to back that up?
Well, what I found is that's not accurate. We obtained a data set, an internal data set from the Forest Service showing high vacancy rates in fire jobs, what are known as fire and aviation management. There were more than 4,500 vacancies in those positions. And those are jobs covering everything from engine captains to dispatchers, so people who are crucial to wildland firefighting efforts. And the vacancy rate was, in the data set that we found, was within those fire and aviation management positions was 27%.
So more than a quarter. And I understand you talked about the difficulty of parsing these numbers, and there's somewhat of an opaqueness when it comes to firefighting staffing in the Forest Service. How did you interpret the numbers that you were seeing? Again, more than a quarter of wildland firefighting positions vacant, according to the data set you see, and then this big discrepancy when you hear the administration saying that they have a 99% rate of hiring and they're exceeding expectations. How did you kind of interpret the data that you were seeing, and how much can you rely on what you're seeing there?
Yeah, so I think that it's important to understand that when the Forest Service says that they've reached their hiring goal and they say we've set a goal of 11,300 positions to hire, wildland firefighting positions, it's a selective counting. And this is a practice that the agency has relied on for a long time, for years. So they're focusing on a certain section of the wildland firefighting force that is not at all a comprehensive look at what the country relies on or needs for fire season. If you want to dig into the numbers a little bit more, they're focused on people at a certain pay grades and down. So they're omitting senior management positions within which there are a lot of vacancies. That said, if you also, in the data set that we reviewed, there are also a lot of positions within the kinds of jobs that they say they have filled. There are a lot of vacancies remaining. And there's a big disconnect between what is being said publicly and internal communications. And the internal communications show, there was a memo that the Forest Service Chief Tom Schultz sent out showing basically an all hands on deck memo that is reflective of a high level concern, and in which he's writing that there aren't enough resources.
Yeah, there's a really big split screen there between what the Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins is saying publicly and then what you see circulated among top management in the Forest Service. Can you tell me more about what Tom Schultz said in that letter and the concerns there?
Yeah, he was sending out a letter that is asking fire managers to make their personnel available to go onto fires. Versions of letters like this have been sent out in the past when there's severe fire conditions. It was early to send this letter. And according to experts that I've talked to, what stood out was that it was early, and there's a language of we're at preparedness level 4 or preparedness level 5, 5 being the highest. This letter went out at preparedness level 4 in mid-July, and in it, Schultz is talking about trying to ask people who have taken voluntary separations to return.
Yeah, you talked about that call by the chief of the Forest Service for recently separated fire personnel to come back. I mean, I think the story of federal staffing here has been really hard to keep up with, Abe, when it comes to the average news consumer, because there's been a lot of legal wrangling over firings and DOJ cuts and things like that. So back in February, you explained that the Trump administration fired 700 workers who support wildland fire response. Now, it seems like there was a period of limbo for a lot of those people. A bunch of people got rehired. But then what happened? I mean, what exactly is behind how many open positions there are today? Why are there so many open positions today?
Yeah, so there are so many open positions partly because there were also lingering vacancies. There's been an exodus from the Forest Service that we've reported on in ProPublica that goes back a few years. It's for a variety of reasons. Low pay, a civil service structure that makes it hard to sustain a career at home, mental health concerns, physical health concerns, and inattention to those concerns. There's been over the recent years, an exodus of some of the higher ranked and expert wildland firefighters. That has continued. A permanent pay fix was codified, and that is something that people have, labor advocates have fought for quite a while. But then there's this added chaos now of, as you said, the layoffs and the administration pushing people to take deferred resignations and voluntary or early retirements, other forms of separation. If it's helpful, to get out of the stats for a moment, I can tell you an anecdote. After our story published, a man in Washington who had been a wilderness ranger reached out to me, and he had been a wilderness ranger who was also in what's known as secondary fire. So he's on fire assignments. He's doing active fire work.
He has his red card, basically. He's able to respond to wildland fire. Yeah.
He was let go in the layoffs. There was dispute over the validity of him being let go, but he eventually took one of the deferred resignations. He has since been receiving emails from the Forest Service asking him, like advertising firefighting jobs to him to come back. So there's this sort of obfuscation within the agency of the extent of its needs. And it's also, I think it's, in talking to wildland firefighters, it's had a real effect on morale.
So this is somebody who wanted to stay, was fired, put in limbo, and then eventually, because of that, took the deferred resignation. But now he's getting targeted for recruitment, which seems like a really inefficient way to run an agency.
That's correct. And then the other thing is there's a way in which it affects the agency's institutional knowledge and the larger wildland firefighting community's institutional knowledge, because the wildland firefighting workforce is large and complex and intertwined, right? It's not just the Forest Service. There are firefighters within the agencies in the Department of Interior, and then there are also people who support the operations in a variety of different ways, from buying supplies for wildland firefighters to predicting the weather. And one of the people who left, who took a voluntary separation in the Southwest, was a longtime meteorologist named Charles Maxwell, who had really focused on the South, interpreting and understanding the complexity of the monsoon. And, he spoke in the piece, he spoke to me about the atmosphere of chaos and concern around, and he wasn't with Forest Service, he was with a different agency, but he's someone who fire managers rely on that local and expert knowledge. And he decided to leave. So like a focus on saying we have this many jobs, we have filled this many jobs, is eliding and sort of obfuscating the reality of what is needed and what is being lost. What
did the Department of Agriculture and the Forest Service say to you when you reached out about this reporting?
The Forest Service disputed the statistical assessments and also sort of parsed it as saying that Secretary Rollins is focusing on the positions that have been hired, what are sometimes called primary firefighting positions. But again, that's a selective counting. Since then, the Department of Agriculture has announced the plans for another reorganization of the Forest Service, and we'll see what form that takes.
So understaffing at the Forest Service, you point out, and you've touched on here, it's nothing new. I mean, this has been an issue under Democratic and Republican administrations. The Biden administration faced this problem as well. What's new now? I mean, is this just the same perennial problem with Forest Service needing more resources to fight wildland fires, or is there something unique to this moment?
Both. I think that it is the same problem that we're seeing longer fire seasons, more, drought-driven conditions. I'm speaking broadly there because there actually hasn't been as much acreage that is burned this year compared to last year at this time yet. And then the firefighting force has not kept up, right? The firefighting resources have not kept up. So those issues are still there. The issues of mental health, the government being inattentive to and needing to pay more attention to physical health and mental health concerns are still there. And what's new, I would say, is that the chaos of the layoffs of the DRP, and also there's sort of a confident assertion because there was a permanent pay raise for wildland firefighters has been codified through the appropriations process. There's Secretary Rollins in public remarks kind of framed this as though these issues have been addressed, and they haven't been addressed. And the assertion that they have, combined with this selective framing of the data to sort of portray an image of confidence when the actual data shows something quite different, is really concerning.
Abe, is there anything that people should know that we haven't touched on yet? I mean, these can be, again, confusing stories, as I say, federal staffing levels to kind of keep up with. On its face, though, understaffing, especially in the western United States at the Forest Service, feels very urgent right now during fire season. Is there anything else you think people should keep in mind?
Well, thanks. I just think it would be good to have a clear, open, and honest accounting of the federal firefighting service and where it actually is and what firemen are actually in need of.
Abe Streep is a reporter at ProPublica on the Southwest desk, and he reported on federal staffing and the Forest Service when it comes to wildland fire response. Appreciate your time, Abe. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. This show is only possible because listeners support us. If you're able to give right now, please check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m., Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.